Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 158, the Solar Eclipse Special. I hope you guys are having an amazing weekend so far. There's been a lot going on in the world stage, as you're all quite well aware. Been hearing a lot lately from you guys about not getting the best quality sleep or issues with communications, energy depleted, not feeling like your usual self, and I completely resonate with that. There's been so much happening, a lot of energy pent up, and we're about to go through a release of that energy. And of course, you come here for the calm amidst the chaos. That's what the Wolfpack's all about. So before we get started today, get relaxed, get comfortable, grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's the morning, or a glass of wine or beer or any beverage of your choice if it's a little bit later in the day. And again, I appreciate you taking the time today to tune into this podcast. And if you're new here, welcome to the Wolfpack. It's a very special time for you to be joining us. About this time last year, I started talking heavily about this particular solar eclipse that we have over the next 24 hours, and it's just incredible how much has happened on the world stage since then. So if you've been here since last April in 2023, much love. I appreciate your continued support. If you've been here for longer than that, then beautiful. It's incredible to grow alongside you and to be a part of your journey. And for those that are new here to the Wolfpack and you've yet to get access to our Discord server, please go ahead and send me a direct message on Patreon with your Discord username, and I will reply back to you in a Patreon message with the Discord server invite. Please don't comment your Discord username below or in the YouTube video, in the Patreon video, or email me. I won't be able to help you out that way. I can only get you onboarded into our Discord server if you send me a direct message here on Patreon with your username. And we're going to be focusing a lot of our attention today on some of the analysis that I've been sharing over the past couple weeks, in the past couple red pills, and in the recent YouTube video I put out talking about this Mercury retrograde time frame moving into the Bitcoin halving, which will be about less than 2 weeks from now. And we see Bitcoin kind of hovering around this 70K resistance. Remember, the prior all-time highs for Bitcoin back in November of 2021 was 69,000. And we're approaching this time frame right now where we're getting a little bit of a decisive energy, where we're about to make the next big move. So it's important today that we just recap a lot of the stuff that we've been discussing leading into this particular time frame of the solar eclipse, the first solar eclipse of this year, 2024. I'll also be doing some decode on this particular eclipse. And due to popular demand for those that are more interested in astrology, I will be going over this upcoming Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, and I'll be decoding that as well. So this episode is going to be packed with gems. Please make sure to take notes. There's so much that I get asked after these red pills are released, some frequently asked questions, not only showing up in the messages, but also in the Discord. And it's usually stuff that I cover here on these red pills. So please make sure, take your time on this one, take notes. Almost all of the important questions will be answered today. And I'm also going to be talking a little bit about the altcoin market, because that's really where the opportunity is, as you're all well aware. We're just kind of using Bitcoin here as the market compass. And of course, the traditional markets as well. So we'll be doing a recap on the traditional markets. I'll be going back to about 84 years ago during World War II and talking about the last time we had this particular alignment, this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, covering all the bases today. I'll be covering a new project that I haven't talked about, Vector Space Biosciences, ticker symbol VXV. We'll also be going over Digibyte. It's been a little bit of time since we've went over DGB. I'll be covering Verge and Axie Infinity. So looking forward to covering those altcoins near the end of today's podcast, of course. But for now, let's get into today's decode. And Just a quick recap. As mentioned in the last Red Pill podcast during the Mercury retrograde analysis, the first week of Mercury retrograde can finish off with a bullish push to the upside. That's exactly what we have going on right now. I stated that in a majority of iterations of Mercury retrograde, we had a move up on day 6 to day 7, which for our current cycle would have been April 6th to April 7th, and that's today. And here we are, April 7th, and we are pushing up into this particular level, which I told you about because I said in the last Red Pill, I want you to mark your charts wherever Bitcoin closes on the first day of Mercury retrograde, which ended up being 69,500. I told you to mark your calendars there for two key reasons. One was that during Mercury retrograde, we tend to close off the end of Mercury retrograde. So when Mercury is going direct, we tend to close off this phase at a similar price to where we closed on the first day, essentially being flat during that time frame. And usually what we see about 75% of the time, we are sideways and down. So we chop, but usually sideways and down. Only 25% of those iterations, we see Bitcoin just pump through the entirety of Mercury retrograde, which we will recap again in a moment because that's important since there is a pattern regarding that. And I know I've been talking about this a lot lately, but this is really getting you guys dialed in. We've really mastered how to navigate the lunar cycle, the solar cycle, eclipses, the lunar phases between new and full moons. Now we're adding in this Mercury retrograde analysis, and it's just really dialing us into what to anticipate during these particular phases throughout the year. And it also lets us know how Bitcoin in particular is in its trends and why those trends end. You hear it all the time, the trend is your friend until it ends. And we've identified this in advance of why Bitcoin goes into bull trends during certain years and why it goes into bear trends during certain years. Just that alone gives people 2.5 years of preparation. So I know that some are new here to this market. Ever since Bitcoin started to break out into this 70K territory, we saw what happened with Solana getting very bullish about, maybe 3 or 4 months, or actually around December, Christmas timeframe. And then all of the attention started going towards crypto right after Christmas with the approval of the first Bitcoin ETFs. Now crypto's the talk of the town. We've seen meme coins exploding, things going on with Pepe. Even our OG meme coin, Dogecoin, is doing incredible, which is a coin that I've talked about many times in preparation for these kind of, last stages of moving into true price discovery and the true alt season, which we're not there yet, and I'll talk about in a moment. But anyways, getting back to this, we are now in a market that is popular again. It's no longer boring. Everyone and their mother wants to talk about it. We are in a bull run. And with that being said, I think that's important because we're going to start to see all of the narratives that are bearish not harm the price action as much as they would have during a bear market or being in a more bearish trend, or what I would call here for the wolf pack, the lunar cycles, which we are not in. And I talked about that in depth in the past couple podcasts, so rewatch those if you're new here. The importance of where we're at right now is that whenever we do get any bearish energy in the market, you must consider that as an opportunity to dollar cost average. Please remember that. And we're going to be kind of sharing some words of wisdom, investing words of wisdom along the way throughout today's podcast, but it's important that we kick this one off right now talking about that. Okay, so the first reason I mentioned marking off the first daily close of Mercury retrograde was because we're typically flat, sideways and down all the way until we go direct, regardless if there's a full moon. And also this happens usually when we have eclipses as well. So because we have a solar eclipse in Mercury retrograde, it's more than likely that's how it goes this time. But we do have about 1 out of every 4 iterations we are quite bullish. And that's important that we talk about this today, especially if you're new to these markets and you are not invested at all. If you're not invested at all and you're just waiting for some glory buying opportunity, well, that's not the way to invest. You can't be perfect in these markets. Nobody is selling the top and nobody is buying the bottom. It's very rare. And it doesn't even matter if you were to, because some people that get in very, very low still have issues navigating this market. And this is what we're going through podcast by podcast every single week to give you the elements of why the market's doing what it does. And then this way you can make your own decisions. You could become self-reliant, not just follow me. Second reason I wanted you to mark off where Bitcoin closed on the first day of Mercury retrograde was because even if we dip during the first 4 or 5 days or so, we could definitely come right back up to that level and even extend slightly higher on days 6 through 8, like I explained in the last podcast. And during that move up, it tends to be rejected, it stalls out, and it corrects further. And I want you guys to note this particular daily close right here on March 31st, our monthly close effectively, where it was 71,500. That is the key level. Until we concretely close above that level, everything lower than that, it's seemingly just a micro bull trap. And we're talking very, very short term, by the way. Now, let's just quickly revisit the 4 times that we talked about last week where Bitcoin moved up bullish throughout the entirety of the Mercury retrograde phase. The last time this happened was the end of 2022. Right here. And as you can see, we kind of had this J curve where we were very low volatility, and then out of nowhere, boom, just pumped up into like the last quarter of this Mercury retrograde phase. So this was the last time that this happened, where it was very, very bullish. Around day 13 is where we broke above the pre-Mercury retrograde highs of December 14, 2022. And one thing to note for those of you that are more interested in the astrological, conversation, Mercury was in the sign of Capricorn during this, an Earth sign. So Capricorn ruled by Saturn, Satoshi, bullish. Then the bullish iteration prior to this was October 2021. Right here. This was a very important phase because this is what marked effectively the top of our last cycle. It was pretty much right there into this final days of Mercury retrograde. And although we did push up a little bit higher later, this was about as good as it got. And it was effectively just a back test of this prior high over here. But anyways, this was one iteration where we were just bullish throughout the entire time. And we broke above the pre-Mercury retrograde highs 9 days, 9 days after starting Mercury retrograde. 1 second. All right. So just 9 days in, it started to get very, very bullish. It's important to take note of how many days it was taking, just because in the last podcast I showed you that 7 days in, we've seen fake outs. So we're right there in that pivot point as I record today's podcast. We're right there on day 7. That's a very elusive time frame, and we do have a weekly close today. So I'll be covering all the technicals a little bit later, but this is really the pivot days. And the fact that it's happening on a solar eclipse really makes it elusive. But during this time frame, Mercury was in the sign of Libra, air sign. Take note of that. Then we have February of 2021. Same as October 2021, effectively. We broke the pre-Mercury retrograde highs 9 days into Mercury retrograde, and Mercury was in the sign of Aquarius, air sign. Then we have October 2020, and you're already seeing a theme here. It has something to do with October or the very beginning or very end of a year. That is when we typically see these types of bullish moves. Right now, we're heading towards we're in Q2, right? So we're not really in either of those, but that's just one aspect. During this time frame, it took us quite a while actually to break the pre-Mercury retrograde highs. It took about 60 days, and Mercury was in the sign. It actually moved from Scorpio into Libra, so from water into air. Now, this phase of Mercury retrograde that we're in now, the one that we're in today, as I record today's video, is in Aries, so fire sign. And the last time we had this aspect with Mercury in Aries retrograde was between March 2023 and April 15th of 2018. So it was all the way back here. Okay. It was this March 23rd, 2018 to right here, April 15th. Check that out. So we were effectively bearish during this time frame, but this of course was during a bear market in a downtrend after a blow off top. That needs to be considered, and also we have the technicals, and that is not what we're doing today, right? We are in an uptrend. We've broken all-time highs slightly. We're trading around prior cycle all-time highs. We're in much more bullish territory than this particular setup, but we're just analyzing this because it could have something to do with how this particular iteration goes. But during this phase, we had about a 30% correction during Mercury retrograde. We were flat, and then look at the buyback into the end of Mercury retrograde. Textbook. Within 2 to 3% of the first daily close into Mercury retro, with a 30% correction in between. This is why I warned about this, because if we do get a significant correction during this Mercury retrograde, it could be a big buying opportunity to dollar cost average, considering that we could finish off the Mercury retrograde bullish. We can have a complete buyback to where we started. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen 100%, but it's something to consider because of how past iterations went. So now one other thing is, let's explore this April into May of 2017 iteration. This is really fascinating because it started in Taurus and then it moved into Aries. It broke the pre-Mercury retrograde highs about 11 days in and was bullish for most of the phase. So it has something in common with those prior bullish iterations, is it takes us like into week 2. Day 9 into day 11 or so is when we start to just break the prior pre-Mercury retrograde highs, and then we move up. So from a technical perspective, you must keep in mind, what were the highs before Mercury retrograde started? Well, technically, it was our current all-time high. So if during Mercury retrograde, we start to close higher highs in regards to 73, 74K, well, the odds are we're just going to have one of those bullish iterations and continuation. But until then, we're in this like precarious middle ground of trading within the range, right? So that's why it's important we consider this. Also, we did not have an eclipse back then. So we were not in eclipse season, and we already had a 30% correction before this phase. Lately, we've barely got a 20% correction. So we're in an environment today that needs a bigger correction. Well, we don't need, but it would be healthy. It would be healthy. Or else we could turn out like the way that I'm about to get into in a moment, which could be a short-lived bull run. And nobody wants that. But furthermore, that will be very tricky to play. So one other thing to mention about this 2017 cycle was during this same time of year, and when we talked about this already, during this same time of year, about 5 days after the solar eclipse, we moved bullish into a micro distribution before a healthy correction. And if we were to add 5 days past our current solar eclipse, this would be taking us to around April 13th. And that would be about 13 days into Mercury retrograde, about 12 to 13 days, which is in alignment with the prior bullish iterations that I just analyzed. So remember, this structure of 2017 that I just showed you was a fake out. We pushed up and then we broke down afterwards. And the chart showing, the chart back then, it was showing weakness less than 2 weeks after the solar eclipse, exactly 9 days after. So that's all happening during this Mercury retro phase. It's pretty interesting. So for our current cycle, that would be pushing us to around like April 17th, which aligns with the year of the dragon analysis that I've been keeping you all up to date with. And what I mean by that in plain English is it's likely that we don't break all-time highs right now and that we actually just chop sideways and down. If I had to add everything up that I've been talking about, I know some of you are probably like, Waters, can you just speak English to me? Well, here it is. It's likely that we do what we do most iterations of Mercury retrograde during a solar eclipse and eclipse season, and especially in an overheated market, and especially in the month of April. So it's very rare for us to see the stock market bullish past the third week of April during the year of the dragon or election years, which of course we're in now. And since that's just 10 days from today, we need to take this into consideration, especially it's around this month's full moon, right around here of April 24th. By April 19th, we'd effectively be in the 5-day window that I speak about, plus or minus 5 days around a lunar cycle is when you are either bearish for full moons or bullish for new moons. Also, remember, we just had a lunar eclipse and we're moving into a solar eclipse, and a very, very important solar eclipse, a rare solar eclipse. So this is the time where it's bringing tons of confusion into the market, people uncertain of what to do. Especially, should I risk or should I not risk is a big question on people's minds. So when we look at our weekly chart, let me pull that up really quickly. We can see that we've been meeting some resistance. Tonight, we'd be printing our 5th weekly candle since breaking into price discovery momentarily. And a very important level that you'd want to take note of is 67,200. Okay, so 67,200 would be right here at the March 18th candle close and this March 25th body open. Closing below that level would be a bearish engulfing candle, and the last time that we saw that set up on the weekly chart was around January 8th, right here, at the beginning of the year, and it followed with about 2 weeks of a corrective phase before recovery. That was about a 21% correction from this wick to this microcycle low. A 21% correction with today's levels would push Bitcoin slightly below 60K into like 57K. And remember, there's nothing going on between 57 and 50. So that would be effectively thin air, and we could swipe through that level fast. And that would only be about a 17% or 18% correction or so from our current microcycle lows. Not too much. It's not weird for Bitcoin. And that also aligns with the 111-day moving average, which sits around 53K. I've talked about this many times with the pi cycle top indicator. And then we have stock to flow actually also sits here around that 51K level. That gives us some more confluence. Of course, this 52 to 53K level is an area of interest, especially since the weekly 21 EMA sits around a similar level as well. You can see that right here. This orange moving average is currently trading around 53K on the nose. So there is so much confluence around this 52 to 53K specifically. But let's just consider 50K to 53K if we were to take another leg to the downside. We've been talking about this a lot lately. We're choppy and sideways at this top range. Nothing has really changed. We're just building structure here, which is actually quite good because this tells me that if we were to get a correction here and then break concretely above 70K on weekly closes or bi-weekly closes, that 70K will be a powerful level in the future after we enter true price discovery. So this means that if Bitcoin was to go up to like 80, maybe 90,000 and then have a deeper correction, 70K could become, or I should say maybe 66, 67 to 70K will become a potential new support. That would be really healthy for the longevity and the long-term chart of Bitcoin. So getting this resistance now in the short term, although it shows weakness, for the long-term people like me, I'm a long-term Bitcoin holder. Even if I've de-risked recently, I did not sell all my Bitcoin, and I have effectively 80% of my whole Bitcoin position. So I did not even sell a large portion of it. I've always known that it's a long game with Bitcoin. It's not the ROI that you would see with altcoins, right? So anywho, I've spoken about that so many times now, there's no reason to take up today's episode discussing that. We have this 50 to 53K level in mind, and remember closely to what I'm about to say. Nothing is promised in these markets. We're just analyzing the levels and keeping our emotions out of it, and considering that most of these altcoins recently have taken a 20 to 30% haircut from their recent highs. We're already getting great opportunities to dollar cost average. So don't wait for me. Just do what's right for you, especially if you're not exposed at all to these markets. Remember to have a dollar cost average strategy in place and take action. Self-reliance is the name of our game here in the Wolfpack. But with that being said, I'd likely be DCAing over the next couple weeks, even though I already built a majority of my positions before the start of 2024. I was finalizing my accumulations during October and November of 2023. So I'm fully positioned, but I've decided to continue to DCA during this phase since we're so close to breaking out into true price discovery, and we've had this lull phase right now since Bitcoin has reached all-time highs and the altcoins really haven't. So there is so much opportunity and so much potential in these altcoins, and I'd actually like to take a second to tune into the total 2 chart and show you what I'm talking about. I know we've talked about this briefly in past episodes, but let me show you real quick. So we're still about 50% or so away from retesting prior all-time highs in total 2. This is the crypto market cap without Bitcoin. So this is fantastic. This is showing you that we still have so much more room to just retest prior all-time highs. And in the last cycle, we extended about 200% from breaking prior cycle highs into topping out, a little over 200%. So even if we just did half of this move and we only went up 100% from the prior cycle all-time highs, you'd see this be putting us at like 3.4 trillion. So from where we're at now to 3.4 trillion is 200% up. So you're not late necessarily. I know some people out there think that they're late, like maybe on Bitcoin you are, but on the altcoins, no way. There's still so much potential. And think about it. If an Ethereum ETF gets approved, that's most likely going between 9,000 and 11,000 shortly after, especially if Bitcoin's already trading at all-time highs when that happens. And I would imagine that's how it's going to be synchronized. It'd probably be synchronized that all happens, like in a crescendo along with the true alt season, but just speculation. So if we did a similar thing with the total 3 chart, which doesn't include Ethereum, you'd get the same numbers. So from about 100% up, you'd be looking at about 2.6 trill, and from here 2.6. It's giving you a little bit, pretty much the same. I mean, it's nearly the same. You don't really have to put too much energy into this. So I do think that this 1.618 golden ratio could be tapped in our cycle. It didn't happen last time. We didn't quite get up there in the last one, but this time it would not shock me on total 3 if we were able to do that. So keep that in mind. Also, it's almost 2.7, and that's 27, and that 27 number's big with Jupiter 27, and this Jupiter has been the key note in all of our decoding throughout the year. Just a side note. And we know that the other key number tied to Jupiter is in the symbolism of Jupiter. The Jupiter symbol is 24, and we have the mirror of 24 being 42. And if we go to total 2, we would see that this 1618 is pretty close to that level, actually. It's about 42. Yeah. So it's about 4 trillion. So if we were to get just slightly above it, we would hit that level 2. And it does feel like this cycle will have more money coming into it than the last one. In my opinion, I do think we will have more money coming into this market than we did the last time. And more diverse players. I think right now we're just in this stage where BlackRock is doing what they do best, kind of like almost like a silent legal confiscation of everything. Jokes aside, I think you all kind of, if you've studied BlackRock, you know their game. But that kind of feels like this phase right now, but we're not quite in the true speculation parabolic advance. We still have a lot more to go until we're there. So last cycle, total market cap did actually hit the 1618 fib, getting back to like the technical perspective here. So we did hit the 1618. You can see that right there when pulling from this swing high to swing low. And by the way, this fib setting is turned on log. We got to this 1618, barely tapped it, and then had a reversal. Well, if we were to get to that level today, that would be 7.2 trillion. That'd be a wild move. And we know that the 72 number is important. 7.2, 72. Bitcoin is 72 in Gematria. About 50% of this total market cap is Bitcoin. Keep that in mind. So speaking of which, let's actually check out Bitcoin dominance really quickly. I think that's something that needs to be spoken of because of where we're at. Chopping in this horizontal range, we haven't had a reversal and we're still technically in an uptrend. So we're less than 2% away from breaking this resistance, and we're still in an over a year and a half trend reversal. So over 500 days of this trend reversal from all the way down here in November, technically maybe September, around Q4 2022, we've been in this trend reversal, bullish. So this does point towards we're still early in altcoins. I hope you realize that. And if we see Bitcoin dominance break out above this 1618 level right here, above this 56.3, and starts heading towards 58, I'd suspect that that'll be on Bitcoin's initial journey towards six figures. And we'd also probably see that the daily RSI will get to about, I want to say probably 85% around that time. So, or not 85, excuse me, it would get to around 85. Somewhere about here, 85 to 87. So we would see around this breakout above 56 into 58% dominance. And of course, this is going to vary if you're looking at CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap or other, like I'm just looking at this crypto cap chart here in TradingView. It's splitting hairs to determine if it's 47% or 49%. It doesn't matter. We know that almost half the market cap of the entire crypto market is in Bitcoin. So given the charts and just looking at this from a purely technical perspective, if we were to breach this resistance and start heading into this level right around here, about 58 on this particular chart, I do think you'll start to see RSI get heated up into the 75, probably approach around 80, 85 RSI on the daily, and then we would have around a six-figure Bitcoin all in synchronicity. Then we'd get the real crazy alt season to follow. Again, use this time between now and then to DCA into position. You've been warned. And if we get any bigger dips between now and then, consider that an incredible buying opportunity to position yourself in discounted altcoins. Also, just a reminder regarding this key date that's coming up of April 15th that I thoroughly decoded in my Year of the Dragon Decoded. That's available here for the mastermind community. I'm just bringing this up one last time because April 15th is about a week out. And we've been seeing rituals left and right lately. Just a couple days ago, we had a 4.8 magnitude earthquake in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Interestingly enough, 4.8 is the Gregorian date of the solar eclipse tomorrow, April 8th. And on April 3rd, there was a 7.4 magnitude earthquake in Taiwan. So imagine that. So if you know anyone who was affected by this, just know we're sending positivity and love their way during these times. Unfortunately, I think these, what I call plasma discharges, are just getting started. I'm expecting many, many more around and after this solar eclipse. I've been talking about this for years now, actually. Even look at what's going on in Iceland right now. It's wild. So also, on the date of this earthquake in New York, we had this, let me show you right here. And I know that this happens several times per year, but just find this to be pretty fascinating. This lightning strike into the torch of the Statue of Liberty, which is wild because I decoded that symbolism in the last Red Pill, and I brought it up on my new YouTube video, which came out before this whole event happened. So it's pretty wild to see how synchronized we are here. And I created that thumbnail, using a section of the upcoming Civil War movie. And that releases this upcoming Friday on April 12th, just days after this solar eclipse in Aries. And I bring this up since Aries is ruled by Mars, the god of war. And this movie is a war theme, civil war, just like on our world stage right now. And they're doing everything they can to predictively program us to expect a civil war. Not my opinion, just what they're doing. Just like at the end of that movie, Leave the World Behind, where there's a blackout, mass confusion, social media blackout, everything, no communications, and then what does it lead to? It leads to a civil war. What's fascinating about this movie is that it was released on November 22nd. That's the 60th anniversary of the JFK assassination. The Obamas were in on this movie. So, yeah, put it all together. So if you take from the date that Leave the World Behind released, which, let me show you real quick, it'd be 11/22/2023 to this upcoming Civil War movie, 12th. One moment. Wow. This is pretty fascinating because I just thought to put this all together, and within the 24-hour time frame, it would be 144 days. And we talked about this recently. I think it was with the Moscow ritual, this shooting and bombing, which was like that movie Tenet, and the 144 people involved in that. Crazy. I just thought of this really quickly as we're filming. So yeah, it's like right there within this whole time frame leading into this following Saturn's Day. Wild. So this movie that came out, the Civil War movie, distributed by A24 Films. I think I talked about this in the last podcast as well. A24 giving you 44 in Chaldean. A24 Films. 44 is 2 4s, again coming back to 24. 24 is the X Great American Eclipse. Also, one thing I noticed about this Leave the World Behind, and I'm just adding this right now kind of off the cuff for you guys because I get a lot of questions about this stuff, and I just want to share some final thoughts before we move into the charts. But the one thing that I noticed about this Leave the World Behind cover was this male deer. So I believe this could be tied to the full buck moon, the buck moon, which is in July. This year it'll be July 21st. Yep, July 21st. So let's consider this, July 21st. It's tied to this Great American Eclipse tomorrow. All right. So the first thing that's coming up, tying the Great American Eclipse up to this buck full moon, is pi. Pi is there. So we have 3 months and 14 days, 3.14 coming full circle. It's also 105 days. You remove the 0, that's 15 or 15. This is also 15 weeks. This number 15 comes back to Mars, the god of war. And war gives you 15. This movie, Leave the World Behind, there's a flyer that falls from the sky during this movie, and it says "Death to America." I took a note on this earlier. Death to America adds up to 47. 47 is your 15th prime number, another 15 connection. And this movie Civil War that's coming out, it brings up Texas right here. It's a big theme for the movie, and Texas gives you 15 in the same cipher as before. And we know the path of totality from our last eclipse in October 2023 to this eclipse tomorrow creates an X over the state of Texas. X is the hex, the magic ritual. Hex is the sacrifice. And there's your 15. So, getting back to this crypto market, it's very important because everything that's going on right now in the world stage, you really want to take time to take advantage of these discounted altcoins before the next big move up. And if we do get a push down because of any negative events that happen over the next 48 hours, obviously that's a buying opportunity presenting itself. And please don't feel any fear about this decode. It's just me revealing the information. I believe I'm protected. I believe you're all protected. I'm not trying to get all spiritual and woo-woo with you all right now, but it's just an intuitive feeling. I feel like I've been given, access to this data in advance for a reason. And I know that the majority doesn't get access to this data. So for that, I feel grateful. And I'm very, very grateful to be able to share it with you all here and navigate it calmly and not push a fear, not push the fear porn, just to share it for what it is. But let's get back to these charts. I just talked about this buying opportunity. I just showed you moments ago how we still have a lot of room to go on Total 2 and Total 3 before true price discovery in the altcoin market. So take advantage of that if needed. And one other thing, back in 2021, when we really broke out in the Total 2 chart, let me just show you how quickly this escalated. So we went up 200% in under 3 months. That's fast. And there was bigger dips along the way. We see this one right here, back testing a 30% dip. We got another one right here, another 30% dip. And then we topped out and we had this double top kind of vibe with a higher high bull trap. We do get 30% corrections in the altcoin market along the way. And a lot of these charts you pull up, there's been 30% corrections. Let me show you really quickly with, look at Cardano. I know it doesn't look like it, but it's a 30% correction that we recently, look at the one before. 33% correction. I mean, look at Theta. Theta's been killing it lately. 35% correction once and again, technically. Dogecoin. What is it, a 40%? Boom. That's a 26% correction. I mean, come on. The opportunities are there, guys. Like, I hope you're seeing it the way I'm seeing it. These 30% corrections are going to continue to happen during an uptrend. Take advantage of them. Anyways, let's get into the market and review these charts. And as promised earlier, we'll be starting off today's TA section with the S&P 500 and adding in an esoteric element that we haven't really talked about here. And it's just because it's started to come to my attention. But before I get into that, just look at this red candle that we had a couple days ago, breaking us out of this parallel channel right there into the time frame that I told you guys about, around us topping out. I find that to be very interesting. So this upcoming week during eclipse season will be fascinating for the stock market. I wonder how it will react, if it will copy what it's been doing for over 100 years, which is topping out in late March, early April, followed by a pullback into May. So the esoteric element that we're going to be bringing up today that you guys have brought to my attention is this upcoming Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus on April 20th or April 21st, however you want to look at it. This aspect is very rare. The last time it happened was in 1941. Now, isn't that interesting how for months I've been telling you about the similarities with the timeline we're in now in the early 1940s, specifically 1940, being the year of the dragon, having the same eclipse dates, and both the Gregorian and Hebrew calendars are synchronized. One of the key dates that I brought up was April 9th, because it was after the solar eclipse in 1940. It would be after our solar eclipse here in 2024, and it was synchronized with the Hebrew calendar as Nisan 1, or the first day of the first true biblical month in the Hebrew calendar. You can't make this up. And that'll be on Tuesday. Tuesday is Mars Day, the god of war. Think about this, family. This is very, very fascinating. It seems like there's going to be another thing tied to war. It's likely to happen in this month of April. So the last date that we had Uranus and Jupiter conjunction in Taurus was around May 9th, 1941. Some will say May 7th, some will say May 8th. It doesn't quite matter about the specifics, just consider around May 7th through 9th to save an argument over the minutia. What I want to do now is go back to early May of 1941 in the S&P chart. And I made a very special chart for you all here. We're going to go by phase and break it all down and see what this adds up to today's market. So we have 1941. This dotted blue line here is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. This is your first lunar eclipse of the year in March, followed by your solar eclipse, and these are the following eclipses that we had. And they're actually in a very similar time frame to what we are dealing with this time around. But look, we have a solar eclipse in late March, followed by a post-eclipse bullish fake out, just like we had in 2017 with Bitcoin. And I showed you that earlier, how about 5 days after the solar eclipse, we pushed up and then it was a distributional top, which led to a bigger correction. Pretty interesting, same setup. So we were bullish around the eclipses, given the prior data from February. We were bullish into this time frame. We pushed up into April 3rd, had a correction into the April full moon, and then there was about a 6.5% dump during the month of April. So if you looked at this from a monthly perspective, the month of April in 1941 was 6.5% down. Then we chopped sideways, and then we had a 0.5% move for the month of May. We were effectively flat during May. And you can see around this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, we were holding sideways, effectively 2 straight months around this as the pivot point. Then it took us about 1 month after this alignment to break resistance and have continuation, and this happened into June and July. Then we had about an 11% gain over the months of June and July. And then we have a double top. So you can see right here topping out at about $10.40. I can't believe how low the S&P was back then. Today it's at 5,000 points. Back then it was 10 points. But anyways, we do have this double top effect. You can see right here in the month of July, a little bit of a correction in August. And then we have the lunar eclipse coming up in September, and effectively the whole market of the year topping out on the solar eclipse in late September. So this year we have a solar eclipse in October, just like a week out from this particular eclipse. This marked the top eclipse season. So you see between the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse, we marked the top for the year of 1941, which was after this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that happened in May. Then it led to a downtrend. And you can see this white line across the screen. It's showing you your supports and your resistances. So at the start of the year, we came to backtest this level. We bounced above it, made our first high of the year. Then we came down to this level, met it as resistance a couple times before breaking out of it. And then we returned right back to it near Q4 and then effectively broke below it by the end of the year. And the downtrend continued much deeper. So, all things considered, if I wanted to put emphasis on this rare astrological alignment, well, it doesn't, it's basically identical to what I've been sharing regarding the Year of the Dragon analysis. It's really no different. And let me show you that. So we have the beginning of the Year of the Dragon. The stock market tends to top out into late March or early April, followed by a pullback into late May or early June, and then we have a bullish July. And this 1941 example is the same setup. And this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, let me show you real quick. We have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction after the eclipses, and it did not create an instant reaction in the market, which of course isn't to be expected anyways, but the way that this has been brought to my attention lately, it seems that that's the way it's being presented. Like it would have an instantaneous effect on price action. And this is why it's important that when you find these things, especially from astrologers, that you go back into the charts and you test it for yourself. Check in on these things for yourself, and you can see how the market was affected by these aspects. You could do the same thing with the Dow Jones chart. So let's quickly check in on the prior year of 1940, which was the year of the dragon, which I feel has a lot more alignment with what we're going through today, but they're very similar. So the similarities with 1941 and 1940 is that we topped out in early April. We had a correction into May, late May, early June. We pivoted by July, and then we had a recovery into the following eclipses, and you could see that right there. Now, we know that we have the October 2nd eclipse. This means that if we were to get a pullback in the month of May, which is next month, which could start as early as now, well, then that would be a great buying opportunity. And we know that we match eclipses with 1940 and 1941. They're pretty similar. Both charts showing a negative month of May. Same with 1972 example we discussed last week for those that brought that up. So all in all, it's still showing we either correct heavy into May or we're stable through April. We correct heavy during May and June into July, and that's the pivot month. Typically July is actually bullish, and we recover if we get a correction in June. And we can see that right here with the presidential election years. We have April red, May red, June pretty stable, pivoting bullish into July. Also, one really strange thing that I found while researching the president during this time, it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. When you go to his Wikipedia page and you scroll down to early life and marriage, and under childhood, you'll see a picture of the president when he was 2 years old, literally looking straight up like a girl. I mean, they aren't hiding anything from us. Hermes, Aphrodite, this is a hermaphrodite. No offense, but it's just, it's interesting. And then they try to like talk about this unbreached as if it would make sense to put a wig and dress up your boy like a straight up girl at a time where we were much more masculine, much more in our... Anyways, I find this to be very awkward. What do you guys think? Would you do this to your 2-year-old boy? Yikes. Anyways. So remember, during the American Civil War, Abraham Lincoln was president, and then he died while in office by assassination on April 15th. And I bring this up because FDR died on April 12th. Died on the day that this Civil War movie will be coming out, and it's the Civil War anniversary date. And he also died in office. So it would be interesting if there's a Biden ritual somehow synchronized into all of this. I mean, he's old enough to the point where it wouldn't even be shocking if that happened, but what it could lead to could be very shocking and could lead to a lot of, instability generally in the United States. And with the eclipse and the USA and all the symbolism tied to it, would not be weird for me. It's kind of something to be expected. So let's get back to the charts. Consider that after this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, it took exactly 1 month for us to break out, starting in early June. And for the 3 weeks around this alignment, we were sideways and down. So consider this for those that are interested in this rare astrological event, because we're about 3 weeks out from this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction now, which will be happening on April 20th, 21st, and that's effectively the Bitcoin halving. We're 2 weeks out from it. So keep that in mind. And for those that are under this belief that we'll just instantaneously go bullish after this moment, please show me where that has happened, because it doesn't seem to be presenting itself in the indices. Now, maybe there are particular charts that you can go into of stocks back then, but please share that. Let us know. I'm also not saying that I deny that there could be bullish energy in late April. It's just nothing that I found so far points to that. Nothing. It would be great if there was. In 2017, we were extremely bullish in late April. But yeah. So we have the Bitcoin chart. Bitcoin weekly close. We're going to be covering that now. Let me turn off the noise, just get to our candles. We know we have the weekly close today. We still have a couple hours of CME and Forex opening before the true weekly close comes in. But to quickly check in on the weekly chart, we have a potential hammer candle forming. So unless CME opens later today and we get sucked down to like 67 on the spot chart, we'll have to wait and see how that goes. We still have plenty of time in the day. Also, we have a 2-week close today, so a bi-weekly. And this bi-weekly candle could be a bullish continuation candle. If the bi-weekly was to close above 69K today, that would look very bullish for continuation, considering this is a 2-week close. But again, being bullish over the weekend is not to be trusted. So this could very well be a setup for a fake out before the traditional markets open tomorrow. And they'll be opening during the day of the solar eclipse. And just the fact this is all happening during an eclipse is also elusive. So keep that in mind. The next 48 hours will be very interesting in these markets. And like I talked about with March of 2017, we had the solar eclipse and we moved up bullish about 5 days later. Well, tomorrow will be day 1 of the solar eclipse, and then this upcoming Friday, April 12th, the day the Civil War movie comes out, will be 5 days out. So this whole next week could be an upside fake out. Absolutely. And it could literally repeat identically to the way that it did back in 2017. And we know in 2020, when we had the last halving, we were bullish up until like right there on the halving. And then we had an 18% correction into the halving. So we could be bullish up until, let me show you right here. Again, if this was to repeat similarly, there could even be a chance of being bullish up until this first quarter. It's funny because that's April 15th. I've talked about this for a long time now. So getting back to the technicals. If the weekly close was below 68.7 thousand, that would show that this 69 level is becoming a macro resistance, with 3 bi-weekly closes unable to concretely close above this psychological level of 70,000. And that becomes even more evident when we check in on the 5-day chart. Now you can see what I mean. This is looking like a distributional top. I'm just saying. This is very evident that there's a clear resistance here with all these wicks above 70K, but no ability to close 5-day candle above 70K. Now, the next 5-day close will be on April 9th, but look at this clear resistance at 70,000 on the 5-day chart. This could potentially be the 8th candle closing below 70K since we initially broke out here momentarily to new all-time highs at the beginning of March. So we do have a 2-day close tonight. I think that's important. The 2-day closing along with the weekly and the bi-weekly. Even if we were to close slightly above 69,000 like we are trading right now, that would just be lower highs in the micro. But of course, we're still in a macro bull trend, and trend is your friend. So we're in a very bullish market right now, clearly. Nobody has to say that. And until we close a daily below 61K, we're just ranging between 60 and 70,000. So that's the key takeaway. We're in a macro bull trend. We're ranging between 60 and 70,000. We're right there pretty much in the middle of the highs and lows. A little bit on the higher side, but it's just a weekend. So this bullish Saturday that we just had and this so far bullish Sunday Well, once CME opens, we could get brought right back down, and we haven't technically filled the CME gap. There is still a little bit more, slightly below 64, like into 63,800. So from where we're at right now, that would be like an additional correction of 8% or so. And with how weak altcoins have been during this phase, having 30% corrections all the way, that could be one of the first trigger points to expect deeper correction. But let's pull up the moving averages here, and we have the 34 exponential has been holding on every back test. And we haven't retested the 200 moving averages in almost 200 days. So you want to keep that in mind, because if we were to actually be mimicking the 2017 cycle, you'll see back then we wicked into the 200 exponential during that correction phase of slightly breaking above all-time highs by about 6% in the month of March, and then this deeper correction. We've so far been mimicking this. So the 200 exponential moving average is huge. I want you to keep that in mind. And then this just barely touched it, like on a tail, bounced, and we have bullish continuation. So from the prior retest coming back here of August 2016 to this level took about 235 days, about 230 days. From the breakout over here, getting above the 200 exponential to retesting, it took about 175 days. But if you look at to the lows, it was about 230. So similar in the last case, kind of judging the time horizon. And we have over here, March 10th was this quick dip back into the 200 simple moving average. That was like a retail banking black swan. And then it took us about 220 days to 230 days to break out into the next phase of the bull run that we're currently in now. And from our last back test of the 200 moving averages to where we are today is about 175 days. So it's interesting, because if I put it up to 220 days, which we were showing as a little bit of a pattern, that would literally be around the May full moon. Same as the year of the dragon analysis and the last Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus and the 1972 iteration. So yeah, absolutely how wild that all aligns. But please know I'm not saying to wait until late March to buy, especially if you're new to these markets. I'm simply revealing a trend that we've seen in the past in the technicals. And note, these 200s are moving up by about $200 every single day. And there would be about 45 days between now and the May full moon. So quick math shows me that 200 exponential should be around 57 to 58,000 by late May. And the 200 simple will be around 54,000. So that puts us into this kind of range over here. And that'd be great if we were to be able to push down to those levels one last time for another healthy correction and a solid buying opportunity. So consider that range of about 54,000 to 58, and we still have this technical level here of about 53 that I brought up several times with the 21 exponential. But this week and the next week, if we keep closing where we're at right now in this high 60s territory, that 21 EMA on the weekly will continue to go up and up, and it could be around this 54K level by then. So it would align beautifully with what we're talking about. The 200s in alignment with the 21. And this 53K area would be a gift. So we'll have to see, because we're in that moment right now where we have this solar eclipse tomorrow. We have a lot of dates aligning. Things are getting weird. It's like the rituals are ramping up more and more and more. And if it is to happen, it's over the next couple weeks, if there's anything between now and this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So let's head over to Ethereum. It's going to be a quick recap, but we have a very important cross coming in right now on the daily for Ethereum, and this is about all we need to talk about, and that is the wolf cross. We have been trading below the 55 simple moving average, and now we have this 8 simple about to cross below this 55 simple. That's a wolf cross with downside implied, And that typically leads to deeper corrections. But until we close below this technical level of 3,155, we're still kind of holding support. So if we were to drop deeper now, it would not shock me to retest these 200s, even though that's a pretty dramatic move to the downside. That would be a 35% correction. Now, if Bitcoin was to go to 54, that would be about a 30% correction or so. So that would align, or I guess that would be a 28. That would align with a 35% correction for ETH. So that would be a gift to come back to these 200s. Absolute gift. And you can see that on deeper moves, we interact with those 200s. So that's a important cross. We're about to get it. And just meeting resistance below this 55 is a sign of weakness. And that'll bring down the whole altcoin market. Let's look at XRP. And by the way, what I just said is not bearish. It's not me being bearish. I'm just showing you the charts. XRP still trading in this range sideways. We did have a wolf cross with downside implied. That's a bearish sign. With the fact that we're unable to hold this 60-cent level and we've started breaking below these 200s, that's another sign of weakness. So for now, I suspect this support right here is broken. Unless we could get above it, but you can see test, 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 big wick test again after this move up in March, and then we started breaking below it. So we could ride that to the upside, but another thing that we could do is we could consider if we were to have any deeper move right now, there it is. It's right there around this level. And if we were to hold the macro support, it would be this white line. And that's what we've been testing around for years now, years. Pretty much since the C19 crash. So we have C19 dump, post SEC lawsuit, or the SEC lawsuit against Ripple. After the bear market, boom, 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 boom. And then that would also be coming back to that level again. I would feel confident about that. If we are to go any lower, it would be about this 53-cent range. And we would just hold this macro support trend line that's been in play now for over 4 years. Technically, 4 total years. Not looking good, very, very bearish. But remember, this is exactly how XRP was acting into March and April-ish of 2017. We were low and then out of nowhere just popped. So I have a theory that it has to do with this X eclipse. This great American eclipse that forms the X and all of the X symbolism. It's just my own theory. Because of XRP, XLM, and XDC, their charts looking so similar, really low volume, low volatility, and we know we're kind of in the final days of this lawsuit, unless it gets extended somehow. I mean, we're approaching grand trial. There should be more updates as early as next week, I believe, and then finality of it coming within the next, before June, unless, again, it keeps getting pushed. I just don't know how it could. So there's something intuitive that's telling me that we're about to have something random happen, like out of absolutely nowhere. And I do believe it might be taking energy away from one thing and bringing it into the other thing. And that's why XRP moves last. We even saw it back here. We had the SEC lawsuit against Ripple, but we went on to go higher than where we were before the lawsuit kicked in. And we made a 10x from this dip up to this high, all because Bitcoin was in price discovery. So we can do 1,000% in the midst of a lawsuit. Imagine what would happen if that was all cleared out. Right? Just consider. And it's simple to show. 1,000%. So a 2,000% move easily could happen off of this. It's not hopium. It's just we know what this coin can do, and it happens fast. It's very violent. So positioning yourself below 60 cents is like a gift. You don't really have to split hairs about that. But can't update too much more because of this chart structure. There hasn't been much price development. Okay, we are looking at a new coin, a new project that Immediately, I pulled a fib, I guess, in preparation for this, but I have only looked at this chart for maybe a fraction of a millisecond. It lost 99.3% of its value. It pivoted literally into the last solar eclipse. We've now moved up pretty nicely from that eclipse, a total 1,000% move. But lately, we've gotten rejected off of a very key level. So keep in mind, getting rejected at the 0.5 fib is not, it's nasty. It's nasty. Especially if you're a project that could lose all of your value. And now there's been a 50% correction, which tells me that this is probably gassing out on its correction, but I always keep the 200s in mind. So the fact that these 200s were back tested after an already 50% correction, well, we could have that go even deeper. And I want to be honest, if this thing came back to 70 cents, I think it would be a buy. I don't know if I would want to touch this thing personally just because it's quite random. I do know there's some solid partnerships in this. You guys could go do your own research if you'd like. But this level right here, rejection, and then this release that it had, if it was to come back, test this prior resistance and hold, especially in alignment with these 200 moving averages, that would be great. And then you can easily see a pop back up to this golden pocket. That would be another 10x. And 3,000% to all-time highs. Even from where we are now, it's 2,500% to this prior high. Now, there might be more chart history on this thing. I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't actually matter too much because anything that loses 99.9% of its value is a shitcoin. I'm not trying to offend anyone. It's just the truth. This is not a good chart. Also, there's no prior bull run that I could see in this data, but the way that it's corrected since the same time Bitcoin was trading at 69K, and now Bitcoin is also at 69K, and this thing isn't even near $20, it shows you shows you what you're working with. So on these, you have to trade these projects, and you have to have very small exposure, like 2% max. Too much exposure in this thing and you're gonna suffer unless you time it right, and it's hard to time this shit right. Whatever funding's behind this project or the CEO or whatever could get caught up in a scandal and this thing could be wiped out easily. It rides too much on speculation, and that's why I don't like putting too much into stuff like this when this is the type of chart it's showing me. If it had a chart of many years and I could see how it's behaved during certain phases of time, I would say, consider it. But this is very speculative. Nothing more than 2% venture capital allocation on something that trades like this. Let's move on to Digibyte. Now this project has chart history. Excuse this because they got rid of the all-time chart, sadly. Let me go to the weekly and show you what's going on. Yeah, but they got rid of the all-time chart. I don't know what happened. I guess the exchange it was on delisted it or something like this. Yeah, I'm not even able to get all of the data, but this is back all the way, like I think in 2014. It was trading at fractions of a penny. And it's gone on to do about 200,000% gains. Now, the one thing, though, is the last bull run, this wasn't so special because we barely broke above all-time highs. So you can see that this was the 2018 cycle highs. It lost also about 99% of its value. Then it popped up. Anything bought around this level up here was pretty decent, about 5K, 5,000% gains. But we returned right back to that support level. But lately, we've started to bounce. So now, here we are in today's cycle. We have also had still a 97% correction. But as of lately, we've started to clear this 236 fib. So that's bullish. That's a sign that we're on a more bullish momentum, and we're likely heading into a bullish phase for Digibyte. And just getting back to the prior all-time highs is about 900%, so a 10x. So that's fantastic, but recently it's had a quick move to the 382. It's gotten rejected, and it still hasn't quite concretely closed macro candles above the 382. And what I teach is to start getting more excited after you get above the 382. Between this level and the 236, we can chop for some time. So just keep that in mind. And this isn't as exciting as it used to be. This had its own euphoria phase back in the day. It's not going to have that in this cycle. It just won't. It's OG project. It's the same thing that's going on with Monero and Dash and even Stellar Lumens to an extent. So yeah, I wouldn't be putting too much in this. I did have exposure to it in the last cycle. I probably am still holding on to some of the project, some coins, I mean. And if it was to go back up to 18 cents, I would absolutely consider de-risking or selling this thing. It's still about 800% up from where we are now. And if it was to go into price discovery, just consider that it was only able to get about 50% up from the last cycle. So if we were to mimic that, that would only be like getting to 26 cents. You know, it had a lackluster cycle. So we need to see if there's anything that can push this thing back above all-time highs, but I don't know what narrative could. I just don't. I'm not sure. From today to that level that I was just pointing out would still be a great move. From here to 26 cents, 1,400%. In the meantime, if we were to have any corrections, I would be looking to this 55 simple, but already immediate 34% move, and over here about 34%. 30% corrections during a bull phase are normal. You could see 30%, it just happens over and over again. So anytime you measure from a peak top down 30%, that's about good enough to start nibbling, you know, putting a little bit into the project if you're planning on investing in it. I am not looking to invest in this one in particular, but it at least has some chart history from the past. I just don't like when stuff comes back to its like C19 crash lows like this did. And it didn't only do it once, it did it for a full year. That's not a sign of strength, that's a sign of weakness, because Bitcoin around C19 was trading at $4,000. The low of our cycle recently was only $15,000, let alone going all the way back down to 4K. Well, this thing gave up all of its gains from the prior cycle. That doesn't convince me that it's a project that I should be focused on. Now we have Verge. Oof. Okay, so this is another great example. You see this is the C19 crash. We went even deeper than that in the recent bear market for Verge. Very bearish in that case. So stuff needs to be taken into consideration. Even during a black swan event where you would think everything can't be more bearish than that, well, it did. And there's proof in the chart. 98% losses, huge spike up, followed by a backup phase. So this was your automatic rally, this was your backup, and this is your SOS. Remember, above the 382 is solid. So this actually was a textbook play. We shot straight above the 382, then we back tested the 236, and we held the 236, which was a prior resistance, as a current support for 200 days. This is a very bullish setup, actually. It's just the way that this project moves so sporadically after being so sideways is not healthy. But technically, we're in the breakout. We're in the breakout mode. We don't have much to get back to the golden pocket. So this is a key level right here. I'm going to map this out because I feel like that's likely to be the next impulse, somewhere around this 786, 0.36 cents. And if we were to have a correction right now, this 382 would make sense to hold. Got about a 500% move up to there. But yeah, this is not good. I don't like when stuff comes back below the C19 crash. It like had its own version of that. You see the structure? V-shaped recovery, huge impulse up. V-shaped recovery, huge impulse up, come back and back test this area. That's what's going on. So we're like in this phase right now. And I got to admit, I don't know if this thing could make it into price discovery. I would not bank on that. I'm not sure what could be behind it. I'm not sure what narrative could be behind it that could allow such a move, especially considering the last cycle, it did not break above prior all-time highs. And that was an incredibly speculative bull run we had in 2021 in Q2. It was solely riding on the fact that the Federal Reserve was printing all this funny money and giving it out to all of us. Stimulus checks. So yeah, this, I would not even consider a dollar on this project. It's trading at a fraction of a penny right now. But maybe a retest to prior all-time highs is in the cards. Maybe. So from today, that's still a generous move, I mean, compared to the stock market. But this is old news. I don't know if I would position myself in this personally. I might actually have some of this from the last cycle. I'm not sure. I might have sold it all, though. I don't remember. Probably such a tiny position. I'd have to look into my portfolio. But I don't remember. I could be confusing with something else. You know, it's very common when you get into crypto and these altcoins that you have 20, 30 different altcoins and you have such small positions in them. It's easy to forget. But anyways, this is in a more bullish phase. So broke the 382, that's your automatic rally. Come back to the 236, that's your back test of a very important fib, and your backup phase, which follows by a break of the AR, and that's an SOS. So that's a sign of strength, and we should just continue to have LPSs and SOSs moving forward. Let's go to Axie Infinity. Okay, so look at this. You had C19 was before this, but if we took from where this thing launched to the bear market lows, it's 1,000% higher, effectively 800 to 900% higher. That's a stark contrast between the last chart we just looked at, right? This is way, way better. From launch effectively to cycle highs was 70,000% gain. So this coin killed it. Then it lost 97% of its value, typical for an altcoin, and now it's pretty stagnant and chill. So it doesn't have the same speculation that it had back then, obviously. We're going to turn this on to fib log setting. I'm going to add my 555. I've been doing that a lot lately. Special color. Okay. Now, we're just getting above the 236 and we're holding it, so that's fine. This is like a buy zone, though, for this project. I believe this is tied to gaming. I'm going to go ahead and assume just off of the name. And it has Year of the Dragon symbolism with this 8, this figure 8, this analemma. I mean, it did crazy in the last cycle, right? And it didn't come down back to the same levels of launch like we've seen on many other projects. So shit. And where it came back to was just the backup phase. So we had this first sign of strength backup phase, and then you have your cycle highs or your buying climax, a distributional top. If you zoom in, you could see the distributional top. I would like to say that this is your AR, this is your spring, and now we're in the process of an SOS. So if we can break above $12.50, that's going to be bullish. And then from where it's trading at now to get back to all-time highs is 1,500%. I'm going to take a note of this. I might invest in this. I might put venture capital in this 2% or something, maybe 1.5, 2%. This looks like it has a chance, especially if it's tied to gaming. Let me quickly Axie game. Oh my god, what is this? Fucking like a game for 3-year-olds? What's going on here? Okay, whatever. Gaming. Project T. Project No Testosterone. All right, I'm getting out of here. I'll go ahead and assume my intuition was right. So if I turn this off, I just want to see where's the 4236. Woo! Oh my god. I don't know if it could do that. I don't know if it could do that. My god. No. I don't think so. I don't know what would bring it up that high, but it did make it to $170. Like, who was buying that thing up there? Jeez Louise. Okay, dude. I mean, that'd be miraculous if this thing could break 500. If this thing could break 500, that'd be crazy. It's 5,000% move. All right, very speculative. Don't get hyped because I'm getting hyped. It's just, this could be something. I like the analemma symbolism with the 8. We're in the 8-year 2 plus 2 plus 4 is 8. 3 8s, 8, 8, 8 is 24. We've talked about this a couple times. As above, so below, as within, so without. Let me try to just get some quick infinity. It has the infinity symbol in it. Oh my God, 38 right there, bro. Am I typing this right? Yeah, holy moly. Okay, Axie Infinity gives me 38, 888, 24. Got some Saturn numbers in here. Got a lot of numbers. The 69 tying back to Saturn, 21 tying back to Saturn, 24 tying back to Jupiter, 12, half of 24, 2 12s, 24. Okay. Got the infinity logo. 73 is the 21st prime number. Again, tied back to Saturn. Yeah, okay, interesting. Interesting. Yeah. I'd probably be building some venture capital in this. And where it's at right now is good enough. Like, asking for a much deeper correction is not, yeah, it's already kind of there. It's crucial cross. Wolf cross at the same time that we're seeing this 55 cross above this 200 simple in the 2-day. Okay, I can't spend too much time on this. I got to wrap up today's episode, but this Axie Infinity project looks pretty interesting chart. It's a pretty interesting chart. And the fact that it hasn't cleared the 382 means there's plenty of room to go. The fact that it's kind of hovering around the 236 is a typical support level. That's what we like to see. The fact that it's not near the golden pocket means that there's plenty of room to backtest prior cycle highs. And the fact that it's trading so low while Bitcoin has yet to really break into price discovery says that this thing could do a rally like it did over here, where if you look from June till August, in 50 days, it went up 2,400%. Like, mamma mia, right? Okay, guys, this is interesting. I am going to mark this one off. As well, I've started looking into Gala, and I already talked about Sand is a project that I'm keeping on my radar. So anything that happens over these next couple of weeks, I'll probably be building in some venture capital positions in those. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. I'm trying to keep these under an hour and a half. Around an hour would be even better, but I've been packing these with as much value lately for you guys because of this Eclipse season. So hope you took notes. Hope you got a lot of value out of today's podcast. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm wishing you all a beautiful rest of your weekend in the Matrix. Enjoy this Eclipse energy, transmute it, and manifest abundance. Much love.